beautiful rose garden that we call the garden of Zikr, the remembrance of God. Now, the first thing you notice about it is there's so many ways to do it. Isn't that wonderful? You know, you can sort of pick and choose, like among beautiful roses in a garden. And dhikr of the tongue, the vocal dhikr. There's the silent dhikr. There's a dhikr of the foot. You might be interested in Sufi dancing. Dhikr of the physical, dhikr of the heart, dhikr of the spirit. Really with every fiber of one's being, physical, mental, and spiritual. All the dimensions that make us human. Let me give you some of the more classical and yet exotic varieties of dhikr before I start to talk about what it is and what it does. So continuing with the theme of its multivarious and multidimensional activities, there is muraqabah. We've seen that. Muraqabah is what I call a kind of eyes closed meditation. One is very quiet, in a very still position, with the eyes closed, and observes, literally, muraqabah, the breath, for instance. And that's exactly 1,000 years ago how it was translated into classical Persian. Khosh dardam, which literally is observing the moment, observing the breath, something like that. And that's quite familiar to people, I think, that in this culture. However, there are plenty of different other sort of modes. There's what I call a sort of an eyes open dhikr, which can be done walking around or hiking like I like to do, or something like that. That's called tafakkur in classical Arabic. Tafakkur is kind of an active contemplation, seeing what's around you, like sight, hearing, touch, smell, the usual outward senses of the physical world, and contemplating those as different manifestations or signs of God. Other types or modes of, these are usually advanced practices, are muhasibah. Muhasibah is another way to do this, to remember God, and it goes like this. Usually every 24 hours, but you begin usually in a retreat situation, depends on who's training you. You sit down at the end of the day and you recollect the thoughts, words, and actions of that day. It comes from hisab, which means literally like an account book, you know. You recollect, it's a win-win situation. You recollect all the things that reflect the divine in your everyday life, thoughts, words, and deeds. And you say usually something like Alhamdulillah, Shukrullah, which is just thank God in plain English. And then in this recollection exercise, you might recollect all the things that didn't reflect, to put it delicately, the divine face of the beloved. And you say, also a formula for that is something like Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah al-Azim, or something like that. And in plain English, this means, God forgive me, more or less. One takes stock, literally in muhasabah, of one's daily or weekly or monthly activities, something like that. And what happens is, slowly but surely, the remembrance, quote unquote, of the consciousness of God extends into the fabric of one's daily life, if you see what I mean, and isn't just a a recollection or an accountant type of situation. Zikr mustamir or tadhakkur, these are technical terms. One studies for years in order to remember one's breath basically 24/7. When you're talking to people or driving or doing other activities, you have to start out very slow and this, and with a pillow and a rug and nice Indian music. But after a while, one trains in tadhakkur to do the remembrance, usually on the breath, using a very complicated system of breathing in order to remember God, as they say, standing, sitting, and lying down. It means in all situations of life. They're daily activities, and yet they're remembering God inside their own heart. Ya Nabi Allah. So what we call yearning, or in the dictionary aspiration, is really, really hot. It's a kind of burning and yearning. And it's that word that the Sufis specifically chose to describe desire for God. Desire for God. Tears on my pillow. That's a Sufi song. You know, you couldn't get to sleep at all last night. You know, that burns you. That keeps you awake at night. That occupies your heart. That's what dhikr. Dhikr is to forget about the self, even for a moment, and remember the beloved, because you are in love. I worked in the San Quentin prison for decades. And one thing I noticed is that people go to sleep. You start out with a lot of steam, and slowly but surely you start to remember the self, the self, the self, the self, instead of Allah. And to revive or to rekindle that burning desire, just like a teenager in love, is so, so important. To keep that spark, to keep that burning alive, is really most of what these techniques are for. My point is, you have to make this stuff your own. You know what I mean? I can tell you this. You have to make it not only familiar, you have to take it on your own terms. If it's a borrowing and it feels uncomfortable and weird or terroristic or whatever I'm threatening now, you know, just don't do it. You may feel that rekindling of desire in song. You may feel it in breath. You may feel it in meditation. There's no really wrong or right way to do it. My suggestion is find the one that's right for you. Pursue that one. One thing that I'm absolutely delighted with about particularly this gathering, I think is so important, is that we visit each other in the different practices. The different strands are woven together, and coming out of this knowing that we're all really doing the same thing in different ways is so refreshing, isn't it? It's so refreshing, rather than saying my group is better than yours or something like that, is that there's something that works for everybody. Sufism has been around for, you know, thousands and thousands of years, but it's so refreshing to know that there's something for everyone in this vast, vast garden of dhikr. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.